Hey, this is Nick Nielsen, author of the Muscle Explosion Program, and I'm doing a guest video here for Mike Westerdahl at Critical Bench. Now, Mike asked me to talk about one of the most controversial aspects of my Muscle Explosion Program, and that is the possibility of hyperplasia. And hyperplasia is basically the splitting of muscle fibers under stress to make more muscle fibers. Now, the reason this is a good thing is the more muscle fibers you have, the more muscle building potential you've got. A lot of people who have genetics in their favor tend to just have more muscle fibers, so it's just easier for them to build muscle size overall. The general mechanism for building muscle is hypertrophy, and that's making the muscle fibers you have larger. Now, I'll be honest with you straight up front here. Hyperplasia, not documented in humans. There's no evidence to show that it happens in humans, but there is evidence in animal studies. Now, a couple of the reasons that I think there's no evidence shown in humans is that, first of all, the training required and the tension required to achieve hyperplasia is pretty rough. It's basically the animal studies they did. They used cats. They put these cats under stretch loads for long periods of time. Now, this is very painful, as you can imagine, but being cats, they didn't really have a choice. Humans, I'm not sure if most people would be able to take that kind of tension. Now, the other issue with this is actually determining that muscle fibers are split. And the way they do this is a muscle biopsy. And maybe biopsy is not the best word. Biopsy implies that they're just taking a small piece. With this, they're actually chopping and taking the muscle fibers and counting them individually in a cross-section of the muscle. Now, obviously with cats, they were able to do that. With humans, there's not going to be anybody volunteering to slice through their arm to look to see if hyperplasia has occurred. So the fact that there's no real way to determine this, I think, is a contributing factor to why hyperplasia has never really been proven in people. Now, like I said, I actually think it is possible in people, and I think one of the mechanisms by which you can turn a hard-gaining person into an easier gainer is to basically work through hyperplasia and increase the number of muscle fibers available to build. Now, the technique that I've come up with to try and do this is what I call stretch exercise overload training. Essentially, what you're going to be doing is a very high volume of a stretch-focused exercise over a long period of time. Now, the Muscle Explosion Program, it's kind of as a total package. The first week is a diet week, which basically pulls you back. The second week is an overload week. You're overloading food, you're overloading training. Now, the specific style of training, you can do it with a compound exercise, or you can do it, in this case, with a stretch exercise. And the demo I'm going to show you is dumbbell flies. Dumbbell flies is the best stretch exercise for chest. And it's very effective right at the bottom here. So what we're going to do is sets of 3 reps, holding that bottom stretch for at least 3 to 5 seconds on every single rep. So you're going to come down, you're going to hold, and then bring it back up. And then you're going to come down, hold, bring it back up, and one more time. Then you're going to set the dumbbells down, and you're going to rest for 30 seconds. Then you're going to go again. And then you're going to rest for 30 seconds, and then go again, rest for 30 seconds. Now, the first day of this, you're going to do this for 20 minutes straight. And the weights you're going to use, you're going to start with a weight you can normally get around 10 to 12 reps with on a regular dumbbell fly. You don't want to start too heavy with this one. And as we kind of get weaker as the training goes on, which you obviously will, you're going to actually drop the weight 10 pounds on either dumbbell. So I'm starting with 65-pound dumbbells. If I can no longer get the 3 reps, and you don't want to push to failure on this one, just kind of as a side note, you do want to stay short of failure. So if you can only hit 1 or 2 reps, that's when we set the 65 aside, pick up the 55s, and keep going. And we keep going in this fashion until the full 20 minutes are up. And then the next day, 25 minutes. The next day, 30 minutes. Then 35 minutes. And then the last day, we go back to the original start weight for 40 minutes. Now, what I forgot to mention, too, is that day 1, say I'm starting with 65s. Day 2, I actually want to bump that up. So I would start with 70s. So I would be basically forcing that progressive resistance on the pecs at the same time as I'm increasing the duration of the workload and increasing the volume. So this is a very good way to really overload the chest. And this is really what I think is the closest way to achieve actual hyperplasia in humans. Now, obviously there's going to be debates as to whether or not this is even possible or not, but bottom line, you're going to get a great fascial stretch out of this, which is going to help expand the fascia, give your muscles room to grow, and you will put a lot of tension on the pecs. So you will actually, even if you don't believe in hyperplasia, you will get a great growth stimulation out of this technique. So let me give you a quick demo, and then I'll come back to you to finish out. I'm going to set my timer here so I can count the 30 seconds rest more easily. If you count manually you're going to tend to err on the side of too much rest. So basically just going to lay back and do dumbbell flies, sets to 3. So as you can see, I'm not pushing to failure on that, just coming down, getting a good stretch and holding it. Now as I'm bringing them back up, I'm not really worried about keeping tension on the pecs all the way to the top. The real focus of this one is that stretch position. So don't really worry about squeezing the muscles as hard as you can. You're going to feel it just by the overload of the sheer volume itself on this technique. So don't worry about squeezing and make sure you get that big stretch at the bottom. And now it's time for my second one. Now, one key thing I want to make sure you know here is when you're doing this kind of a stretch-focused exercise, make sure you are thoroughly warming up that target body part. Before I even started doing this, I did a few sets with lighter weight on flies. I did a few sets of very light dumbbell presses to really warm up the tendons, the muscles, the joints, everything. You really want to make sure you are well warmed up before you go straight to this technique, because it's just that strong and it's just that much of a stretch on your pecs. So one last set here. Now, to give you an idea, you're going to be doing approximately 300 sets of this stretch exercise over the course of 5 days. So, as you can imagine, generally speaking, no scientific study would ever use this kind of training protocol, because most untrained subjects would be crying after the first day. So, because you're a special kind of crazy and you want to do this kind of training, you're going to get a lot out of it. It's going to be very tough, very challenging, probably one of the hardest, most painful training styles you'll ever do. And I know I'm not really selling it all that well here, but that's just the bottom line. And if you want to achieve hyperplasia, I think this is your best shot to do it. So definitely, when you get a chance, check out the muscle explosion program, incorporating this style of training into it. And I think you're really going to get a lot out of it. Really build some serious muscle, some serious strength.